So last year we had a retreat, and one of my goals is that um, codas start to be recognized as a distinct group of people, that we have our own unique needs and our experiences that are part of the deaf experience and not really recognized. So we had uh, uh, it was a workshop before our retreat last year, and it was called the Coda Legacy Project. So I have a nonprofit organization called the Coda Legacy Project. And the goal of that organization is to gather stories that are similar in the deaf community, including codas, because in our research, codas are mentioned and mentioned and mentioned, but not really studied outside of their brains. So we've had, some brain studies that have been very incredible. Um, and I got it's called My Coda Legacy. It was a book that was designed by a Coda woman to document that Coda's personal history. And I thought, why don't we do that? We start writing our histories, and everyone, deaf and Coda, always say, if they heard my story, they would stop their discrimination or they would understand us. So the goal is that we start telling our story to people and that we record them and we allow researchers to come in and from those stories, and we start gathering numbers, because what we need are numbers. In the deaf community, we have some statistics. They're not wonderful. They're really not wonderful. And they're old. We don't do a lot of research on that ongoing. So, and on codas, we have very little direct research. So I am a trauma therapist, and my work is in deaf, mostly, and intergenerational trauma. So when that trauma is passed to children, so other cultures pass is clear, but in the deaf world, it's not clear, because hearing people look at hearing children and say, oh, they're hearing, ooh, lucky, they're not deaf. And deaf people also look at their hearing children and say, you're not deaf, you're hearing, and they exclude them too. So both communities have a little exclusion of codas. Intergenerational trauma, those models tell us that trauma passes to the children, period, right? And we don't, we're not, we're hearing, we get out of that. No, we have it too. And we also experience similar discrimination and oppression and many different ways of having our own trauma that isn't recognized. And the world sees, you're hearing, you're fine, nothing wrong with you. But codas inside feel the same as their parents, but outside we're a little bit different. I mean, if a Black family had a white child, that white child would see and experience and understand, but maybe myself, they wouldn't get that experience. Um, However, when that, you know, white child walks around, inside they still feel they will discriminate against me or they're against me. Inside they still have that feeling. So how do we recognize that? One, through numbers and research and gathering similar stories. And that's one of the goal of the Coda Legacy Project, is for people to come and share their stories in one place. So we have one concept, and that's what we will play today. Is we have one concept, and then people will, oh, and maybe not exact that story, but that feeling they know, and they can share their story of that experience. They'll say, my parents not like that, my parents like this, but we understand the concept, right? Because you can say it's not that. Oh, you understand it. So we have an understanding of what that is, but we don't have names yet because we don't have the information. So the goal is to start information, and we can really understand the depth of trauma of the deaf experience, because now deaf person one usually, I mean, around 95%, more than 95% of deaf people are born to hearing families. 3% of deafness is, but about 95% have hearing families. So the deaf community used to have opportunity for cultural transmission, deaf schools. Now it's changing a lot. And the future for deaf people, for codas, a little bit different. So now what we want is to start gathering stories, gathering information, and really recognize that the deaf experience is wider than just the deaf person. Like even their hearing parents go through their own trauma, guilt, uh, you know, they go through that too. So we need to recognize this, and we need to recognize the children experience it too. It's not just the deaf person, it happens with generations. And usually with hearing parents, there's a lot of guilt, shame, fear, not understanding, many things that go on that get passed to deaf child, and that get passed to that hearing child, not only from their deaf parents, but from their hearing grandparents too. Because the first person who told me, watch and take care of your parents, was my grandma and grandpa, right? They passed that responsibility to me as a child. So, what we want to do is look at, oh, okay, but also at the same time understand. And this first workshop today, talking about dialectics, that there are always two, well, not two, but many, many different views of the same story. Hearing parents have their own story too, and we hearing children have our own story. Same with deaf people have their own story. So what we want to do is start hearing everyone's story to understand the full depth of harm to our community, because I think that deaf voices, no one listens to them, right? And we are hearing people and we have privilege. We do. We don't accept that. People don't like it when we speak up. And some harm has happened in the deaf community because of codas, but that's based on their experience, right? Maybe their parents didn't have access and, whatever. So they responded to their trauma, and that caused some harm in the deaf community. So I understand that. And deaf people also have their own things. They've harmed the community too. So it's not just one side. And hearing, of course, but we have to remember we have hearing allies, and we have hearing parents that love us, and hearing grandparents that love us too. And we are allowed to love all of them as well. And at the same time, share our stories. So the first workshop will be about different perspectives, and that we be respectful and mindful. And then the second workshop will be about those scary stories that we share in our community that keep us silent, and not share. And then the third workshop will be more connection. Like, which time did you feel connected with your hearing children? Or if hearing parents come, when did they feel connected with their deaf child? And as CODAs, how can we connect everyone? So my goal always is universal sign language for all. It's always my ultimate goal. And I think that CODAs have a very important role in that, because the research we've shown on the CODA brain shows that if a child is raised with English or, a spoken language and ASL or a sign language, they're called bimodal. They're not just bilingual. So bimodal means their brain functions in two different ways at the same time. So their brains become larger, faster, smarter. Yes. And it becomes an acquired neurodivergence, right? That's what it's called. So some people quote us often like ADHD. No, you have a big brain. You have a lot of room to think in your brain. So therefore you think a lot and maybe not out loud, but inside. So we need to start doing some of that and share our experiences to become more normal for us because quotas are taught to be silent. So, so dialectics is everyone has their story, and we need to be mindful and respectful that maybe their story is different than mine, but it's still their experience. So, we have hopefully a few people will be joining us for some stories, but with dialectics, my origin in counseling was working with an agency that is a DBT agency. And that's a type of counseling called dialectical behavioral therapy. And traditionally, it's cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what you think, what you feel, your actions. Yes. But when you have a group of people that have trauma, it's hard to think clearly. So, deaf people in general have a lot of trauma every day, and we call it everyday discrimination. Those are little discriminations every day that add up. And I have, it's called the Everyday Discrimination Scale, and it was designed for people of color. However, I modified it, the Everyday Discrimination Scale for deaf one, and I have one for coders too. So you can take that survey and answer those questions about your experience with everyday, facing different discrimination experiences. But when you have those small everyday experiences, and one example is going to the doctor. For hearing people, they don't always like going to the doctor and they can put it off, whatever their reasons. Deaf people have additional reasons. Like, I have to call and get an interpreter. Will the interpreter show up? Do I know that interpreter? Do I want to fight with the doctor? New doctor, or I'm looking, or hard to find a regular primary doctor who's willing to provide an interpreter, and you have to look, and that just becomes, and that's one piece of an everyday life of a deaf person that becomes overwhelming, and therefore healthcare gets impacted by everyday discrimination. And that can impact whether a parent decides to take their child to the doctor too, right? It can pass on. If parents don't go to the doctor, their children learn, I need a doctor. So when we look at everyday discrimination and other factors, we also have to understand different perspectives around this. When a deaf person comes and I don't want to go to the doctor, like, I can't say that it's not a big deal. I can't say that. It is a very big deal, and it's very frustrating. And if you're a woman and you go to a personal examination with an interpreter, it's not comfortable. A regular doctor, as a hearing person, isn't always comfortable, but with a stranger, and maybe you know them, you've seen them many years, it's awkward. And everyone has their story. The interpreter will be like, awkward, deaf person, awkward, and the doctor, They don't even know. They don't care. That's their job. But in those situations, we have to be respectful of that person, their experience, and where they are. And that's just one part, but there are many different things in life that are very, calling for an interview, right? For a deaf person is very different. It's challenging for people who are looking for jobs and they can hear normally, but if they can't hear and they call, they get the interview and they have to ask for an interpreter and the interview gets canceled, right? They're not going to get that job. So frustrating everyday discrimination experiences that passes to the children, and the children have their own experience of that. And what does that, like, not taking care of health, not always taking care of or being able to get the best top jobs because of barriers means that the children also experience not inadequate health care, parents being not employed to their level that they could or should be, and they experience financial issues. The children also go through that with their parents because most deaf people are underemployed or unemployed, right? They don't get the appropriate employment that's with their actual, level. So it does impact their children, how they take care of themselves, and we have to hear everybody's experience of that. There's also funny misunderstandings, and dialectics teaches us that we have to meet people where they are. We have to understand their situation, and it's important that we step back and how I feel, because if a person is, emotional, I cannot let that person control my emotions. And what we do is we just kind of allow them to have theirs and separate that from myself. However, in the deaf community, one thing that we talk about is theory of mind. And that's not often discussed, theory of mind. And well, everyone has their own mind. And that's not always cultivated well with deaf children. So therefore, sometimes it's one perspective because they don't have that information that allows for other options, right? So when we look at the deaf community, one thing that really impacted my understanding of this was EMDR. Are you familiar with EMDR, Tina? Are you familiar? EMDR is a form of therapy, and it doesn't require any talking. It's not required. And the goal, well, what we do is we use eye movement or tapping, or I have buzzers like this too. Buzz, have a light, soft lights. And when people do that therapy, it helps the brain process information, and old information and trauma, it kind of cleans it up, and then it helps the brain change from an old pathway in the brain to a new path in the brain. This therapy can depend on, it's called the adaptive information processing network. Okay. And that information processing network is based on information that you have stored in the brain. So, for example, if I drive this way to work, and I always drive the same way, but how do I go around? I always go the same way. If I don't know, there's another way. So I don't know it's there. But if I look at the map and then I can do that. So the brain can do that. The brain must have that information. And that's where information deprivation hits the deaf community and where we see it. Because if I don't know that there are other choices, I won't make the same choice, right? So deaf communities, sometimes you see, why don't you make a different choice? You know, it's because information deprivation worse than language deprivation. You know, it's and ancillary and incidental information is roughly 75 to 95% of all of the information that we gather. So not school, you know, what you learn through is about 25%, up to 25%, right? So what a hearing person in general knows, deaf people get 25% of that. So there's a lot of information that's missing for deaf people, and awful because there's no access to language. There's no access to the information, but hearing people can option. They can do that easier. And one example is one woman, she came and she was having a problem and she went to her doctor and the doctor said surgery. And she, okay. And she went and she had that surgery. After her surgery, she found out she could have gone to therapy instead. She didn't have to have that surgery. It wasn't until after that she learned that from someone else. She was very upset because nobody told her, right? She didn't understand that. And that is awful. That's an awful feeling to later be like, okay. So not everyone has that information. And so sometimes when people, it's because they don't know another way to be. They don't know how to change that situation or they don't know what to do. So that's the last resort. So we have to understand that's theirs, but not mine. Right? So my emotions, and when, like, for example, if you're fighting with your partner or your children, ah, ah, who's mad? Me or them? Me or them? Me? Mad. I'm mad. Mad. I'm fine. Okay. And then you can address their mad or their behavior, but I'm not going to escalate to their situation. And that's important with mindfulness, is understanding how I'm feeling first and then addressing that situation second. It's safe. Okay, safe enough to go ahead. And then, so fine, I notice you're mad, what's going on? And then you can talk about it, have that conversation, or notice. So when mother says, I went to my daughter's house, messy, daughter upset. I don't like you, out, mother left, right? But she said, I'm shocked, that's not my daughter. Well, then if that's not your daughter, you messy, instead of what's wrong, right? Well, typical. Am I wrong? Are you okay? Everything fine? Because this is not typical, right? Should have asked first instead of, a daughter responded in kind, right? So we have to understand everybody's going through something. If I arrive and I feel, means me, what's going on? A little bit out of that situation to help them from that situation too. So it's important. I understand me, and it's separate from them, and that they have a different perspective, right? maybe she knows that's dirty. She knows she hasn't been cleaning. She knows, but doesn't know how to deal with that. So needs mom to, and then we can work together, right? Make a different plan or something. But if I things out, it's no good, right? So it's important that I understand my experience or my view is different than yours, and I should ask first, right? And so it's important that we have curiosity instead of judgment. And so DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, one of the first rules is a non-judgmental stance, that we approach everything with non-judgment. And that means me included, that I never assume what you think of me or what you think of something. I will never assume that. If you don't tell me, I'm not going to assume you're mad or you're upset or whatever without you telling me, because I'm not going to assume anything about you, because that is judgment. I put myself in your mind, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to put any negative thoughts in other people's minds. Like, Kavita's mad at me. Tina thinks I'm stupid. Maybe they don't think that. But for me, that's really judgment. I'm judging Kavita. I'm judging her thoughts, that maybe I'm negative on myself and I put in your mind, and you're not. You like me, but I don't give the opportunity to you to speak up yourself and tell me what you think. So that's important, that I allow people to tell me what they think, what their experience is, and I ask. I'm curious, and then I don't judge myself through your eyes, or like, oh, she thinks that I'm using her to beat me. No, I'm not going to use anybody else to be negative about me. I have my own thoughts. So until a person tells me, I never assume what they think. So they can think what they want. I have no control over that. So with dialectics, we always think, even though we're looking at the same thing, we have different experiences based on, even though we were raised maybe in the same house. For example, me and my brother doesn't sign. He doesn't sign. Well, sorry, he has baby sense. He still sends mom, dad, out front. He signs very interesting baby signs. And well, whatever. And he's also deaf, my brother. Hard of hearing. He's hard of hearing. He grew up hard of hearing and now deaf. Yeah. So now he finally wears hearing aids. But for many years, he refused to wear hearing aids, because his view was that if he wore hearing aids, that hearing people wouldn't trust him. Right? But that's his internal belief. And I always asked him, because he worked as a paramedic on an ambulance, and you can't hear them. Should they trust you? Because you can't hear them. They think you can. He said, during an emergency, I need my eyes, not my ears. So if I see them bleeding, I take care of that. Gunshot, take care of that. I don't need to talk with them. Okay. I guess hearing people like to be comforted, but I guess that's true. And he was fine for a long time. So anyways, he had some adaptive equipment he had with a stethoscope, and you have amplified stethoscopes too, but now he can't hear anything. We have hearing loss in my family. So anyway, but two perspectives, and he judged those hearing people, right? But today, wearing hearing aids isn't a big deal, right? But to him, deaf people, he has his own judgments about deaf people that he applies to, but many hearing do think negatively about deaf. That's our experience too, right? So anyway, so the goal is that we are patient, that we are kind, safe, and that we listen to other people and their stories before we jump to judgment, right? And assume, because that's a problem. And one thing we have in the deaf community is called delayed reaction. And that is a trauma term, delayed reaction. And I call in deaf community is this one. Because oftentimes deaf people are forced to read lips or try to figure out something. That's every day. You know, you meet a hearing person and they and there's two different kinds of understanding when you are looking or reading lips or trying to figure out a different language. The first one is, do I understand the words they're using? Right? I understand the words. There's the words. The meaning may be different than the words. Yeah. So that's when you, yeah, okay. He meant, oh, he was kidding me, or he was asking me a question. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So there's two different kinds of understanding, and that can cause big embarrassment later. So one example is a friend of mine, he's deaf. He was traveling in Europe and he was visiting Italy and he'd been there for a while and he was ready to fly home. So he got to the airport and he saw a USA Today newspaper, and my European friends said, everywhere, USA Today. But I never see it here, so we don't buy newspapers anymore here. But in Europe, he saw it. It was a while ago, and I want to know what's going on in America before I go home. So he's sitting in the airport and he's reading the paper, and a man comes over and he looks up, and the man says, "Do you speak English?" No. And he goes and he reads the paper. And the man stood there and looked at him and he was like, and he realized he's reading an English newspaper. Right. Yeah. And the man's like, man, finally, like, okay. And he walked away. My friend was like, oh, so Paris. He's so used to hearing people asking if he can read lips. He automatically said no. That's why he said no, because he just habit, he assumed, can you read lips? And he said, no. I was like, oh my gosh. And still, like years later, it's like, oh, embarrassing. But that moment of like, misunderstanding based on delayed reaction. Do you speak English? No. It took a while for him to get it, but we have those experiences of, oh, different misunderstandings. And some English words or English words um, are not common. You only use those jargon. And so one example is my husband works on a ranch and he does, the farm work and works on buildings and does construction and things like that. And he was working with this man, and the man asked him for a shim. He told my husband, go get a shim. And my husband, who is deaf, my husband said, shim? I understand you're right, S-H-I-M, shim? And the man said, yeah, go get a shim. My husband, shim? What is a shim? I have no idea. Shim? That's not a word I learned in speech therapy growing up. I don't know what is shim. I have no idea. Shim. And then back and forth. Jim, I don't know what that is. And the man said, on the doorway, the shim. that thing that that's called a shim. My husband's like, I had no idea it was called that. But because they shimmy and keep it, that's not a common word. speech therapy, speech therapy ended a long time ago. My husband was like, okay. And that man never heard that word. That so it caused a misunderstanding, but they both have different views. But if you ask some hearing people, ask hearing women what shim means. They're like, oh, they don't know that word. But my husband, who worked in that field for a long time, he didn't know that was odd, the word, right? That man thought it was odd. So my husband thought, they have a sign that's easy. If you said, I would know immediately, right? It's a different language. And that man, my husband, like, thinks I'm stupid because I didn't know that word, right? And so it causes a lot of misunderstandings when we don't understand that everyone has their own experience. So in things like trust, is that guy, that hearing guy, he'll come and check on me. He's like, he didn't trust me because I'm deaf. He wants to make sure I'm doing the right way. He thinks I don't know. Okay, whatever. So many times, a lot of assumptions happen. Do you have your own story of misunderstandings? Any you want to share any story, your experience, Kavita or Tina? Yeah, got one. Oh, come on, a lot. Yeah. I was with my partner, Bob. Everyone was telling me, everybody tells me, is Bob deaf? And I say, yeah, why? Yeah, of course he's deaf. What do you ask? And they say, well, he speaks so well. He speaks so well. And I think, well, he was raised oral. He went to speech therapy. He was required to go. His parents were very adamant that he learn to speak. So, no, he's not hearing. He's deaf. Um, and people who are hearing understand him very well. He is very, very clear in his speech. And I laugh. I just laugh because, I understand the different perspectives, but it was something that he was not really trained to do. He kind of had that innate. And his view and my experience is very different. I struggled. I was raised oral too. And I understand that he did have to work pretty hard at it. But for some reason, hearing people understand him and they don't understand me, even though we had similar deaf experiences, raised orally. Uh, I can speak and say the same thing that he says, and they don't get me and they get him. So there's a lot of these little things. And like you were saying earlier, like with speech reading, like he's used to hearing, like he had a lot of training on speech listening. While I did not have speech listening training, I had more lip reading training. So I didn't have that auditory training. And he's actually pretty good at listening and hearing, but sometimes he mishears things because it comes in a little bit differently than he thought it would. And people will say, but wait a minute, why do you speak so well but not understand me as well? Well, because they're different skills. I speak well, but I can't hear. They're very different skills, and that causes people to misunderstand a lot of things. So it's a very interesting discussion that we have with people about that on the different perspectives. And we decided just to let it go because hearing people do not understand that concept. True, very true. There are different skills. Each deaf person has different skills, right? And, and that's what I try to explain to people. It's very, very different. Everyone has their own way of doing things, and it depends on the frequency of their own deafness. Some words they can pick up, some people can hear speech, some people have that skill where some people just don't, or that training. And they'll say, "Are you sure that you're deaf?" And he'll say, "Yes, yes, I'm deaf. I can give you my audiogram if you need it. This is my decibel loss. I can prove it on paper." And people still scratch their chins about it. And we say, or people look at me and they say, "Kavita, I don't understand you, but you're good at lip reading." And then your partner, Bob, he can't hear me, but he speaks so well. It's a very different dynamic. So it's very interesting. My parents were the same way. Yeah, my mother spoke very well, clear. People would misunderstand that she was hearing, but she refused to read lips. She refused. So we would go to the grocery store and she would tell the person who was cashiering, "I'm deaf and I don't read lips." Okay. But she said it clear. So I would be behind her and I'd be like, "But I can hear if you need anything. I'm here for you." She was very blunt about it. She did not read lips. But my dad, his speech wasn't as great, but he loved to with people. He loved hearing people, but still, he was good at lip reading. He was a great lip reader and communicating with people. But my mom, who could speak well, refused. She said it caused too many misunderstandings, and she was afraid of those misunderstandings. And in the end, it hurt her. Yeah. So in the end, it hurt her. It's important how you filter that, like when you can and when you shouldn't. Yeah. With my partner, Bob, he decided to finally stop talking. Mhm. And only in the home with family, because outside he stopped. And I'm also very good at lip reading, and I've stopped that as well. I'm just not going to put forth the effort because we're going to keep it simple and just say I'm deaf, and if you don't sign, that's fine. I'm deaf, and you can talk slowly, and I will try my best, and I'll be watching you. Or we can write back and forth, or we can try my phone. We've got different technology, and immediately they'll look at Bob. And Bob just doesn't, he just doesn't engage. He just says, "Nope, use the phone." It's so much easier. Yeah. And so we do have to stop that practice, or we did have to stop that practice. And it's gotten a little bit better. It's gotten a little bit better, but still, everyone knows he can speak. Yeah. 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 And that was the problem. Yeah. Yeah. With my mom, a doctor came in and she didn't know who he was. And she was deaf and blind, and he used VRI. And I'm sure she said, "Okay, fine, thanks, bye." And he thought she understood him, and she didn't understand. But she speaks so clearly that there's a misunderstanding between the two of them. She didn't like hearing people. So she had very little tolerance, just wanted them to go away. So that hurt everyone in the end, but oh well. Um, and I have a right to choose my filter. I have a right to choose that wherever you go to an event or to a store or whatnot, filter first. Mhm. That person going to be okay, open-minded, willing, then if not, then I change the way that I am. I change the way that I communicate with them. And right away, And then again, how many people have the ability to filter? How many people? And like with hearing people, they do have the ability, yes, and deaf do as well. But my question is, how many? Well, that's a wonderful example because you're calling it filter and I call it mindfulness. It's that ability to kind of stand back and look, because, you know, I see a lot of deaf people in my practice. And one thing we talk about often is with deaf and hearing couples, this is often a fight. This Because the deaf person likes to get there a little bit early for different reasons. For example, one person likes to go to church early because that person uses a cochlear implant and they don't sign, and their partner like to show up late. And for that person who is deaf and uses a cochlear implant, it's important that they get there and they know what they're going to be talking about so that they can follow along better. So they need to get there, open their Bible to the right. And so they have the program and they set it up for their best benefit so they can, you know, actually enjoy the sermon. And their partner didn't understand that. They like to get the why, we don't have to. And that I couldn't, you know, they couldn't enjoy church because they got there late and, you know, flustered. And when you are flustered, you can't understand well, right? Your understanding goes down. And then there's no setup. I don't know what the preacher's talking about today. And then they don't want to go to church anymore, even though they enjoy it, right? So, but for deaf women, sometimes it's a safety thing. And one thing you said, who's in DBT, we call that willing. If that person is willing or they willful, you can see a person, and you know, you can tell, but a person who's like, oh, perfect, you know, and sometimes deaf women need a little bit more security. You know, they can't just the front office. They need to get there and where, oh, maybe first, second time with better, but can alone. But the first time it's awkward. So they need that extra time. But we have to understand their perspective. So in deaf and hearing couples, that's one of the big issues of the deaf person needs extra time. They've learned years of experience has taught them this, and you question this, right? So you step back out of your mind, assume nothing, and ask why. Why should or why? Why does she want to get there early? Why? You know, have a reason, you know, safety, want to feel comfortable, reduce nerves. You know, if maybe you helped reduce those nerves, it would be better, right? Better relationship, fight less. Okay. Well, it works that way, right? And I do want to mention that one person gave a workshop in the fall. It was wonderful. They were a deaf person and they were talking about science. They were a scientist and how the brain works. And I love science. I'm a big science fan. And so how a deaf person and how a hearing person approaches things. A hearing person depends heavily on auditory information. And that's how they process information in the brain is through the auditory channels. And a deaf person processes double, not through their ears, that auditory channel doesn't, but they process in two different ways in the brain. And the brain interprets it visually and it processes for hearing people, they have one auditory process. It processes at one time, you know, because they hear things every day and it processes it quickly in an auditory manner in the brain. It's automatic processing. But for deaf people, it is seeing and then it is understanding. So there's two different processes that happen in their brain and with communicating with that person. And like you were saying, like you get there and you want to get there early and you want to get comfortable. And, you know, where do I sit? You know, is this person, you know, going to be able to be seen as I sit here? And so there's different ways of communicating in the brain where hearing people, they don't, they can process things immediately. You know, they pick up a conversation and start listening to it that way. But in ASL, it's different. Again, Katie, oh, sorry. Kate Merrick is her name. That's a deaf scientist. They specialize in, like you were saying, dialectical behavioral therapy. I like dialectical behavioral therapy. And she uses a different word, but she was saying that they both have different behaviors and different reactions. and why. She was explaining why. Totally fascinating. Yes. And I think that she should probably come to the Coda Fest. She should probably, we want her. So the brain is fascinating. And one of the things, so deaf people use visual spatial part of their brain. So it is seen and then processed. You have to understand both, like what the words mean and then the concept of what's behind the words. So sometimes person, and then you're like, he was joking or flirting or something. I missed that emotion part. And that with emotional attunement, that's a language deprivation piece too. But going back to what you're saying, so visual spatial. So I was trained in many different types of trauma therapies, and one is called brain spotting. And this is fascinating because it doesn't require language either. And this relates to where memories are stored in the brain. And for hearing people, when you find a spot that is in this area, it's always what they heard, something they heard. Um, and when you see in this area, it's something they saw. For deaf people, you can have their field is both here and here. So because they process information in both the oral and the visual spatial areas in the brain. So sometimes their memories will be, and you have a harder time categorizing. And it was with language deprivation too, because when you have language, it provides the ability to categorize, which you get that in English speakers. So two, you can start, labeling and naming different things. Deaf people have a longer pre-verbal period, but they still have a lot of events that happen before they acquire language later on. So their spots are different. How they learn, very different context, right? So yes, that's a very, so if you give me their name, I will contact them to see if they can come. We're still looking for afternoon speakers, and science is always my favorite. I love it. I love science, especially brain science. Yeah, yeah. I think she lives in Texas. Well, I'm happy to contact her. I do have her contact information. Perfect. Yeah, please share. I love it. Yeah, yes, we would love that to have more science behind why codas and deaf people are unique. Because if deaf people have that, codas have similar, right? But we have that and our hearing, we have both. And so the way that coda brains process information is we can speak English, but in ASL ways. It's very fascinating. But do you know Dr. Jamie? His book is wonderful. Jamie Wilson, Dr. Jamie A.B. Wilson. He is a prescribing psychologist in Washington, and he wrote a book called The Etchings of the Mind, Preserving the Etchings of the Mind. And one of his last chapter, I think very important chapter, was about hearing loss and dementia or um, go together. So yes, so people who are hearing their whole life and then they get hearing loss, it heavily relates to their dementia, because when a person starts to lose their hearing, their brain is like a deaf baby's brain, right? Deaf babies born with billions of brain cells. And when there's no language, their brain prunes it. So they start behind, right? Deaf babies, because there's no language, right? So hearing people, when their brain doesn't use that area anymore, it prunes, right? So you start to forget, and that's associated with hearing loss. So it's important that people continue to be stimulated. And they used to believe that deaf people didn't get Alzheimer's. They used to believe that. Yeah. Because my dad had Alzheimer's, and one deaf person said, deaf people don't get Alzheimer's. Excuse me? Deaf doesn't beat genetics, the family issues. But I said, okay, that's not true. But they used to believe that generally. And the reason is a little bit true. So deaf people can function longer than hearing people because they don't rely on hearing. If they continue to socialize, their brain tends to be pretty good. The problem happens when they become isolated. So they go to a hearing care center, to a nursing home, a skilled nursing facility, something like that, or hospital, or they can't go to the club anymore, they can't call their friends anymore, or their hearing family takes over and starts taking care of them, right? When their hearing family takes over, they become simple again because hearing family, right? So their intellect isn't needed anymore, right? So that's when you see in their memory is when they become less communicative. So not before. So I think it's key that we have universal sign language from birth because it doubles your brain size, one. And if we can improve children's brain and intelligence and all that, we should. We know we can and we don't. That's sad. Like those hearing children could benefit a lot. We all, the world could benefit a lot from ASL or sign, right? In the UK, BSL, fine. We'll take it. But in our world, no. But imagine if you signed your whole life, hearing people would have benefits later in life, right? They would function much better longer, less problems with memory care. So, well, we just have to convince hearing people that signing is better for them, in general. Oh, that's my goal. Is to have Dr. Jamie Wilson come in and those who have done that research and start to talk about it. Yeah, absolutely. I think we should. We should have him on and oh, absolutely. Yes. Oh, and I met him, Tuju, at the Adara conference. So my goal is yes, and other situations come up with him, but he's a very well-known psychologist because he is a prescribing psychologist. So he's not a psychiatrist, he's a psychologist. Yeah, so he went to psychology school and has extra training to be able to prescribe medication, right? So he's not a doctor. So a little bit special, a little bit different, but like, wow. And he, if you can see him present, he's wonderful. I hope to have him come someday. So I really enjoy. He's funny. He's very funny. Funny man. But good guy. And so ASL sign important, just as speech is important. And it helps, like communication when it doesn't work anymore. And my father also had a stroke and he recovered very well. And the doctors believe it's because he used ASL and like TTY. So that's how he practiced, his left hand and sign. And so he did very well after recovery. And they believed it was because he used more of his brain. Um, so, and interesting, EMDR works with people who've had strokes. Yeah, because aphasia, they call it word salad. So in their brain, it sounds right, but when the words are not clear, well, the speech is clear, but the words don't make sense. And EMDR, it doesn't matter. Like you can, help their depression because it's frustrating to have your brain not work properly. So it's frustrating, depressing. But you can still do EMDR on those people. And also EMDR for people who don't have language. So deaf people who have a deaf plus or never were exposed to language still can use with them too to reduce their emotion experience. So it's a wonderful tool. Tina, do you have any misunderstanding stories of yourself?
Trying to think. When it's finished, I'll think of lots.
Yeah. Well,
Just, just a lot of times I've watched my parents like with their family. I'll stop signing. They'll watch them and they'll go, yeah, 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 yeah. And then when they finish, my mum will look at me and I'll say, do you know what they said? And she'll say no. And then I have to explain it to her. But she thinks she's caught little bits of it and she'll say yes, yes, yes. But she's saying yes to something that she shouldn't be saying yes to. And I have to explain to her, no, don't say yes, say no.
that, right?
A
And
lot of that.
a lot of that. And my dad thought he was funny. He liked to force hearing people to read his lips. He thought that was funny. He's like, so one time, we were at Easter at my cousin's house, my aunt's house, and many of my cousins, slow, patient, and they can sign a little bit. But my dad said, I'm going to make her read my lips. He said, he, we had got our food and he was standing there with his food. And he asked my cousin, and my dad said, my cousin, okay, well, I was just sitting there watching because my dad, character, I was sitting here. And my cousin left the kitchen out and she had toilet paper. I didn't say toilet paper. I said salt and
So
my cousin, oh, I'm sorry. Hold a minute. She said, hang on just a minute. Hang on a minute. If you're holding food
yeah,
and like you're in that area, it's out of context, right? It should be about food. And yeah, context information. That's contextual information. There's no sign, da, 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 and you say that word. And the cousin, for me, like I call it developing some contextual context or developing contextual information. So you have to look at the whole scene. And he's in the kitchen, there's food, everybody's eating. And so if you say salt and pepper or just that the mouthing, it doesn't fit with a kitchen or whatnot, it doesn't fit the context, then the person should develop common sense skills. Or we're talking about food, right? Food. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes, for sure. You're right. But she did ask, like, toilet paper? And he said, yeah. And at that time, he was a little like, he wasn't 100% at that time either. So she trying to, you my hearing family is very kind, and many of them do sign some. So one of them took and signed, and he chose to mouth to her. I sat there, laughing. I'm not going to help you. You decided to force her. Okay. You think you're funny. Okay. But there are many of those, like, sometimes you just, okay, okay, okay. And so I will share one story with you that I think is very funny. Uh, one man was telling the story about um, he lived in an apartment upstairs and he ordered dinner. And he got a text that said, food is here. So he went downstairs, he went to the elevator and it opened, and he went downstairs and he walked to the front and he saw men standing there with bags. And he walked to the door because it's glass, you can see through it. And he opened it and he took the bags, and the man turned, took the bags, thank you, shut the door, and he walked back to the elevator and he's standing there waiting. And he looks over and the man's at the glass and he waves. And the man says, oh, okay. And then the elevator opens, he gets on the elevator and he goes upstairs. He gets to his house and he opens up the bags. Orange juice, milk, some meat, bread. Oh my gosh, that's my neighbor. I've seen him before, and I took his groceries. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And he's like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And oh, I go downstairs. Nothing. His food is sitting outside. The person who delivers food left it, but the neighbor was gone. Oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. That feeling of like, oh, he said, I'm so stupid. Man. And he said, 1 month later, I saw him on the elevator. Oh, no, 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 no. Just that mortification of like, oh my gosh. Uh, that. So that kind of like, he could have opened like, are you here for me? He could ask him, no, I'm your neighbor. Oh, come on in. Okay. But right, a little bit of communication would have been very beneficial in that moment. But hey, he got his dinner and free food. So lucky, 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 lucky guy. But oh, the neighbor, which one? The neighbor. Oh, the neighbor. Oh, he did get it because he went down. Someone let him in, but the man grabbed other bag. Yeah, his bag. Like he, oh, hold on, and he grabbed the other one. And when he was grabbing it, the man shut the door. He was like, he thought he was waving, bye, thank you. He said, I did give him a nice tip, but he was like, oh, thanks. No, no. Yeah, yeah. Like, and that happens a lot in deaf community. Really, ooh, oops. So those misunderstandings, and that's the importance of dialectics. And everyone has their story. It's important that we stop. How do I feel? And then ask. Is this for me? Oh no, you went in. Oh, you live here. Oh, perfect. Right. But communication. So that, so that is time. Workshop one. Um, Wonderful. Tina, I'm so glad that you came from the UK. Where where were you today? Oh, at
Donkeys.
The donkeys sanctuary. She's visiting the donkeys today, and she came home to see here. But you will join us later, or it's too late. You will join us again. Yeah. So I'm excited to have you because you're kind of well known in our community, huh? Our Coda community. Oh yeah, people. I know who you are. Yeah, yeah, because you set up Coda West. Huh. The mom who set up Coda West, the most famous of the three moms. The other two, I don't know their name, but her name. Yeah. So is it now? Is Molly taking over? No, it's not your doppelganger. That's you. Like I hear, well known, very involved with Coda, that spirit, we need parents like that who are very involved and want to support. We need that. It's very important. Yeah. I'm so thrilled and excited that we're going to be having Coda Fest. I'm definitely coming. Well, I'm excited because this is, part of Coda Fest. So we will have this. So at Coda Fest, just to highlight what's going to happen, we will have a booth there. So like you, we'll have workshops and people don't always like to during workshops and sometimes they and later, like many. So during that weekend, we will have a booth. People can go in and share their stories all weekend, you know. Plus, we will be filming while we're in those workshops, making sure we capture all the stories. Plus, we will have, personal people to go in and their stories so we can make sure that we start with a big database of information. And I'm hoping, I'm just dreaming and hoping that we'll start. We're going to do a documentary. That's the goal. Yeah, not a movie, but a documentary. Data. That's it. Mhm. That is the goal to prove deaf and coda how the brains function, how, like you were saying, Dr. Wilson, with Kate that I was talking about earlier, Kate Murek, um, those folks, those people with valuable information and data to share. And we want to make sure that people are understanding this. And that's why we have this kind of behavior, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But I've talked with people who are themselves like coda therapists who don't understand that the coda brain is different, right? So even we ourselves need to understand the coda experience and how our brains function because um, treatment and therapy is for neurodivergence that's beneficial and for coda children in school. They also do experience their own language deprivation, and sometimes their behavior in school gets labeled as ADHD or disruptive or oppositional sometimes, but that's part of neurodivergence, right? I want to share a little bit. I need to ask permission. I do want to share one story, but I do want to ask permission to speak of that coda about when they were young. Um, yeah, and we'll be here throughout the day for sure. Yeah, because it is her story, and I don't want to share it without her permission. I'm their advocate as well, and there were things that happened in school, and I'm going to ask their permission and then let you know during the next session. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we'll go ahead and ask that and then share it. Perfect. Yeah. And like here in Arizona, we will provide interpreters for codas if they need it. Yeah. So here, some codas have interpreters in school, and some codas have auditory processing disorder. So they hear, yes, but they don't process information in English. So that's also part of a neurodivergence. So it may be important to have interpreters in school for codas because that's their first language, right? And some codas, that's their only language until they get to school. But people think they'll figure it out, right? And they get into school and they don't speak English. She says, interesting you say that. Both of my kids are adults now, but I remember when they were in school, my daughter was in preschool, and they had called me in for a meeting. And I went, Bob and I went as parents, and they said, well, I don't know how to say this, but I, uh, uh, and there was an interpreter there. So the person said, your daughter, most of the time she signs, she doesn't speak, and her speech isn't necessarily correct. And uh, because you're deaf, we don't want to hurt your feelings or anything like that, but we do want to make sure that your daughter has the services she needs and whatnot. And at first, I was actually impressed. I was impressed the teacher and the principal called us in and asked our permission first. Uh, because most people will just go ahead and start to correct the children without really involving the parents in that process. They involved us in the process, and we said, yes, definitely. We definitely are, our house is a signing house. We sign all the time. We use ASL. We don't use our voices. And they said, oh, how come you don't use your voices? And I said, well, because we're deaf and we use sign language. That's how we communicate. And my daughter can hear. I know she can hear. And if she has errors in her speech, go ahead and correct her speech. That's fine. But don't take away her signs, leave them as they are, and help her with her speech. And the teacher agreed to that, and everything was fine. And we worked on phonics and vowels and, all of those introductory speech things, because those aren't things that we do. We didn't do phonics in our house. But I did want her to learn those things. I can't teach her those things because that's not what I know. And so the teachers discussed it with her father and I, and we gave feedback on what would be good for the classroom. And it was a cooperative relationship and experience. So it went beautifully. And I like that in my mind, like how many teachers are like her, but how many teachers are aware?
Mm.
Right? So we need to have documents. Parents are alone, right? And that experience of deaf people like being mainstream in school, that is also the CODA experience of being mainstream in school too. That's not recognized, right? Not often recognized, right? And so my partner and I looked at each other and we said, okay. And this teacher was so kind to not want to offend us and change things or culturally, hurt our feelings or things like that. And it was wonderful cooperating with that teacher and the principal. And then when my son came of age, we put him in the same school so that he would have that same positive relationship and that we would have that same positive relationship. And they didn't take away their sign or stop them from signing in any way, but they just taught them speech as well. So now both of them are beautiful. Like they both communicate beautifully. So it always works out when communication is, important, right? And it's respected. So, but I would like to be able to advocate for parents more. And part of this, and one of the biggest reasons for CODA Fest is to empower parents, right? To be better parents. They don't know how. Like they, most of them didn't go to hearing school, but now most did. But their experience was different, right? Than their hearing children. But for me, I was only CODA, my brother. And so we have a very similar feeling of, isolation and, you know, they don't know, are your parents coming, a different language? And I don't understand that word or speech, making, those things all come up in the CODA world. And it's very lonely for CODAs in school, and that doesn't get recognized enough. And so we want to empower parents with information, education, documentation to bring to schools on, my quoted child needs, extra support, or, maybe a 504 that has like a neurodivergent plan, right? Because their brain is larger than other children's, and therefore uh, they will have either like dreaming or, need to move because their brain is functioning. So providing different accommodations for that. But we need to recognize that it's a neurodivergence first. We need to gather information. So the goal, Tina, I've got a question for you. We're here and Joy just mentioned a 504 plan here in the United States. And a 504 plan is it's not like a very strong plan, but it is a plan for education. Do you have something like that where you're from? An
I
educational?
didn't when I was a child, but now they have. I don't know what they call it because you use an IEP, isn't it?
Yeah,
I
well, a
don't know.
504 is before an IEP. An IEP is more serious.
Right.
Yeah, a 504 is like additional supports.
You have something, but I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
But you have to fight for it.
yeah.
It's really hard to get.
Well,
But you have to go on a waiting list, and it takes years. So
it shouldn't.
no.
The same thing in India. I'm originally from India, and I was born there. Same thing. They're still fighting for this. And I think that only the United States has that particular that opportunity, that for deaf, that privilege for deaf people.
Right.
Um,
Oh,
well, and we'll have to find out more. But I know the UK and Ireland is now working on their own. Yeah, yeah. I just they were writing some of their language on that. Yeah. So Coda UK, Ireland is now working on proposing that as Coda.
good.
And one of the things that is important is with CPS. So we'll be talking about that in the next one is CPS. When Coda children are taken from the home, they're generally put with hearing families.
Mm.
I've heard stories about that. So we will talk about that in the next one at noon. I have to share that with you. Okay, so we'll be talking about, I call them urban legends. Those are the scary stories that we hear and things that parents have to do to make sure their hearing children are safe. And when like that, and boogeyman stories, and when you hear like can't say anything, but that also causes us to be not say anything to outside people when things are different. So, but proper therapeutic healing means that hearing child, Coda, should go with a deaf family, not a hearing family, right? Because if the goal was to that child to go back to their parents, um, they should be placed with a deaf family that is healthy, right? So they understand. Hearing families are the family not so we don't want them to understand that. We want to
Yeah.
make sure that culturally appropriate services are given to, we need to recognize that culturally it's their culture so that they're placed culturally appropriate. Now they're placed with hearing because they're hearing. Uh, so
Can I just ask about ADHD and neurodivergent? How do you tell the difference? How do you know whether they're neurodivergent because their parents are deaf or whether they've actually got ADHD?
whether medication works or not.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Right.
medication will work for people with ADHD.
Right.
It won't work for people. A big
So have they done brain scans and everything?
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah, but they did them in like
Wow.
2010, 2012. We've had that information for more than what, 15 years? Yeah.
Why is nobody talking about it?
Yeah. I don't know. And I don't know why it's not like I don't know why they're not still like I
Yeah.
I can't imagine people everyone should know this information, right? That a coded brain is the key. That's where I think very key to understanding the human brain, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can make people smarter, their brains function better. And so research shows more EQ, so emotional intelligence as well.
Mm.
And it's emotional, you can read emotions better. This has been studied and found that's true. They can understand emotions better than other people. So also, the other thing they noticed was that codas can generally understand people who are speaking in a different language, even though they don't speak that language. Yeah. So
Wow.
speaking a different language, like I get what they're saying. Like I may not understand the word, but I get what they're saying.
Yeah.
So codas do that very well, right? That's a thing they do. And that's all in the research. So if we can develop, yes, yes. So we have research on that. Uh, oh, I can share it with you. Yes, yes. So we have it from 2012 and before. This is old
Wow.
information, not new. Right. Tina, maybe you know this. There is a person, a researcher from the UK. I think their name is Julia, and they did research back in 2014, 2015, and they presented about codas. Yeah, that research. So, and they did it here too. So here it was like Elsa Bornstein, and they did the Salk Institute. It's Julia. Oh, look, it might be Jana. Oh, look, I think I know who you're talking about. Jana. Jana. Yeah, I think it's her. Yeah, I'm a research junkie. So I love words and documents.
So is there any research that I could give to my therapist to help her understand about coders?
Yeah, so I have a blog called codacounselor.com. And so I have information on there for therapists
Yeah.
who treat codas because like I'm one person.
Yeah.
But so some deaf parents will and then give to their children's therapist.
Right.
You know, so coda information's in there. So I do refer other therapists to go look at the information. And in there, it talks about neurodivergent treatment as a possible approach for codas.
Right.
So yes, there's information there. And some research is there too. So
Okay. Thank you.
and I haven't been able to catch up on my blog lately because I'm going fast. Um, yes, people have shown up. However, maybe they are at work or something. No,
I didn't want to cut in for my mom. Is there an echo? Do you hear
because
it?
both of you are on at the same time.
Okay. Mom has iPad. Definitely. This is hearing problems.
Oh, now it's better.
Yeah, I turned off the volume on hers, but I want to put Mama's camera on. Okay. Oh, Mama's asleep a little. Look. See her? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Code. I didn't want to interrupt your. You joined late, Mom, and I joined late. I'm Coda. I joined because Joy, I took one of your workshops or something you offered on Zoom. With that, interpreter, work still, oldest of four, Coda, have many story too, yes. Later can share, maybe not today. Today will Yankee baseball game on. Mom thrill, must watch. Soon here, New York, New Jersey time. So mom joined, lived with me 1 year now. So I try expose her, explain about language deprivation. She not realize why my speech not good. Why? Ask me now. I don't have answer. I'm daughter oldest. I don't have answer. So that part of care, support mom during her now just birthday, 86.
Mhm.
Just
Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Can you see her? Wait,
86.
better.
Yeah, look at 86.
So maybe later, other time, join. Can share some. I'm happy about research now about Coda Brain. The last part you mentioned, I'm like, that me drop school. All people said, me ADHD. No, different. So neurodiversity, yes, 100% yes. But I survived through, adapt, but still, that's, I don't want break now. You have other workshop, other session. I saw it said with video. I'm like, I'm not prepared video. Sunday, relax, join. My name have to show.
Oh, I appreciate
Yeah.
your
Use my phones more.
yeah.
Full name, last name.
We like names and faces together.
My mind, sure, but second half, but will again, my mom exposed to all that information. Important for her. Deaf seniors too don't know about their experiences in individual. So that helps. So
Did you see Coda Brain or did you see language deprivation on from before?
both. Wait,
Oh,
wait, now I can't hear you on my phone. Okay. Did I see Coda Brain where? I mean, here today?
I did a workshop on the Coda Brain.
Or no, I think I did your workshop on language deprivation, not
Yeah.
Coda Brain. Yeah, I like that because I found, okay, I have time. Okay, 1987, in New Jersey. Before that, I started interpreting in the 80s. New Jersey had one ITP, training cute. I see her face. Look at my story. I started interpreting mom, well, deaf, not hard of hearing. Father, deaf, but become deaf. 8, speak well, like Kavita said, your husband, partner, Bob. Father can't speak well. I grew up what? All people hearing thought, father smart, can talk, woo, father smart. Me, oh, no, explain. Father dumb, like rock, not smart. Mother smart, but hearing people, mother can't talk. Mother, ooh, ooh. Father, explain over and over. Father real dumb? No, but not as smart as mother. Mother also graduated Trenton School for Deaf in 1957, 17 years old, got full scholarship money for Gallaudet. Can't go because she old, 17, already date with my father. So born me, she was 19. So
Mom
yes,
graduated New Jersey
yes.
School. Maybe she knows my friend. A different year. I call her Bat, but Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Walsh, I don't know. No, I take her sometime every Wednesday. New Jersey School Deaf have a museum. Take her there. But her class, 1957, Deaf Club here, still have few Deaf Club age. She has many people know her. Plus, my mother was teacher assistant in New Jersey School for Deaf. So still, it's not close, still there, but no more resident deaf students, no more sleep there. That also, Joy, and my mother grieve about deaf schools closing. She sees news, upset. Yeah, all over. But New Jersey doesn't have the residential program anymore. School's still there, but I don't want to.
No, Arizona just lost its deaf school.
I think I saw that news, but it's so like
Yeah.
I can't see that because so for me, I started interpreting ITP in the 80s. Then that was a time where ASL was not officially recognized as language itself. The early 80s, the green books we started using at college, but my mom had friends signed English, Rochester method, sign. So one of those people, I think Gallaudet, also the man, he used to come to the house, he said, ASL, not separate language. And I was so conflicted because I was in college, ITP, learning about ASL, and they're telling me different stories. Her group was like, no, and sign in English order and speaking same time what we're doing now. I can't do that. Can't do that. Talk and sign same time sounds ridiculous. It sounds awful to hearing people. So I just do one or the other. So I'm always like that. Joy and Tina, I didn't really meet you, but it's only one way or the other. Can't do same time, talk, sign same time, and make sense.
Well, I'm trying to talk and sign at the same time.
I know you have
Well,
to accommodate here.
I said my dad was very strong. My father was a CDI.
Oh,
He was a counselor too. So
wow.
he was my favorite CDI.
That's, of course. Yeah.
Beautiful language, but
It's not for everyone.
Tina's from the UK. So
Right, I saw that.
ASL is for language, so I'm trying to
Right, and I'm sorry I didn't join on earlier, but we all have our experience and where we come from. Oh, and I also heard you say when we came on, my sister, I'm oldest, my sister doesn't sign. Oh, last week I took mom and my sister came. Princeton, New Jersey, Princeton University had where's my papers? Deaf literacy, no, not literacy, literature, deaf literature conference. So Peter Cook, not Ben Bahan from New Jersey, Trenton School for the Deaf, ASL literature, Ben Bahan. So we went to Princeton University for the weekend.
Okay.
So it was really nice. They have 4 deaf professors, but they hosted the first ASL literature session. But I'm 60s, mom 86, beautiful weekend. We walk around the school campus. It's nice to see all that happening here.
Wonderful.
And that Tina said people have to still fight. People are still fighting everywhere. It's frustrating.
Even though we have the ADA and deaf have rights, yes, but it's hard.
And there's interpreters who are they're not interpreters, like in New Jersey, you have to be qualified. Okay, there's people that show up. I showed up at a physical therapy appointment. Some other man I'm with a different agency signing, not fitting. And the deaf consumer doesn't have the skills or the information to advocate for themselves. So I see, I'm like, what year is it? 2026? A deaf friend stopped by yesterday and I'm like, what, where are the deaf advocates? Where? Not me. I feel like it's a conflict for me. Where? So anyway, now I'm unloading my frustration. No, no, no. Celebrate Deaf Fest. You're having that CODA things. Yay. For the young CODAs.
Now for all, it's really
Oh, yeah, yeah. But
parents too. All of
yeah, I
yeah.
saw that celebration. My first experience to CODA was 1987. I went to Gallaudet and I was taking voice voice, they called it voice interpreting course. And I was in Gallaudet and I had to videotape myself with the speaking English for a video for testing my skills. And while I was in Gallaudet's library, I saw a VHS videotape. It says, children of deaf adults speak out. And I was like, what is that? I put it in, I watched it. It was Marianne Royster. I remember her name. I remember her name. And but I don't know her personally. She had a panel. Is she a CODA?
Mhm.
Was she CODA herself?
I think
I don't know. She was a professor at Gallaudet, but she hosted a panel of CODAs, and they were talking about their experiences, 4 or 5, and I was like, phew. And then I found out about the organization. I went to 1 or 2 conferences, California and Rochester. Then I went to Las Vegas, 90 something, and I really loved it. But I did not, where some people I saw like were kind of, and my mom was not happy. I told her, explain, I'm going CODA. Mom, defensive. What for? Talk about deaf people? Criticize them? No, no, no. Blame mom. Those people stain me. Grow up, stain, understand my feel. Mom, little, no, not little. That time when I didn't ask permission. I was 27. I'm going, but I felt conflicted because she felt very, very threatened. Why are you going? I'm not criticizing. And she was proud deaf. She's not shy deaf, right? We see you.
we saw Zayas.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I'm happy that CODAs are getting, the people are aware. People are aware.
We're trying. And the goal is that we spread the awareness and
Yeah,
that
and
our experience be studied.
bigger brain. Yes, yes, yes.
So key. But
We are
if we have
different.
sign language, that would benefit everybody, more access is more access. Like, it don't have to be perfect, but we have to start somewhere. Let's start with
Right.
these, if we teach them now in school, by the
Then
time,
they'll know.
like, we'll have sign language will be normal, right? Because
Normal.
people speak a different language, sign is universal for us. If they speak Spanish or they speak any language and they use ASL, we can use that as our common language. I don't have to touch their spoken language. Right? So yeah, we have very unique brains. There are 3 people who have that kind of brain quotas, and some deaf. It depends on their level of fluency in English.
Right.
Or if a deaf person is fluent in English, they call them bimodal. And then polyglots. So people who speak more than 3 languages fluently. So India, you see many, Switzerland, you see many can speak. And that's because of where they store information in the brain when they're translating languages. And then they will use that visual spatial field, and then musicians, because music is a different language and you have to have an emotional like with your group. If you're a good musician, right, you have that harmony with other people. So those are 3 people with that kind of brain. So it's very unique, very unique. So There's always more to learn about it.
Exactly,
The more
exactly.
talk, the more people will, research our stories and who we are, and then hopefully ASL for all. Well, in the UK, it'd be BSL for all. Yeah, a universal sign would be good. Yeah. There are some beautiful concepts all over the place, and we should do that for codas too. In the UK, what's your sign for coda? In India, it is this. Why? Because I love why. I'll tell you why. Because I just saw somebody explaining why they chose that sign. It is because uh mother is this, and then the little kid, mother, father, little kid. So mother, father, little one. So that's their sign. Is they see the sign with the eye, they take in the signs. And so that's their coda sign, is the little ones who take in the mother and father's words. That's cute. Africa signs coda. Same.
Yeah.
I
One
think
conference
every
at
sign.
Coda.
Yeah. Ireland. Yeah. I love universal sign language. I'm totally into it. I want to be an interpreter. Well, I'm becoming an interpreter. Yeah. So yes. Um Perfect. So
We
many.
went universal signs when I went to Japan 1991 for what's the name of that conference? WFD, World Federation of Deaf Conference. I went 1991. Couple reasons. I went with a deaf friend, but my brother lives in Tokyo. And my parents, my mother went a few times. She met deaf people in the clubs in Tokyo. So when I went to WFD for the conference, not with family, parents, just myself, young professional working interpreter, with my friend who was deaf, she was studying, she was taking pictures at the conference because she was studying children's fashion at FIT in New York. So we went to the conference together. My brother helped us get hotels, blah, blah. And at that conference, one of the international interpreters, Bill Moody, he, from New York, I saw him last week in Princeton, and I had a memory. My English is not, I'm not getting my English now and signing same time. I had this great, I have to pick one, English or sign. I had this great
I can voice for you.
memory, and then I'll hear you. And I know maybe you know that. Okay. So understand me, Kavita, are you following me? And I feel comfortable because your coda isn't speaking. I had this great memory where Bill Moody was interpreting at the conference, but I was social. We'd just gotten there and I was meeting Japanese deaf people, and they came up to me. They were asking me, and I was like, meat, pancake, meat, cook, no, no, no. And I was and then I saw Bill. I ran to Bill Moody and I'm like, I need your help because they're asking me, what's this? Oh, interpreter. This means interpreter, but I had no idea. Yeah, and I thought that was so funny because all these
Trans
that makes sense. Translate, but now it makes sense. But I was so frustrated because I thought, oh, I'm good. I understand all these people. One of my friends is Japanese, and she lives in Hawaii now, but she is came to the US to learn ASL so she could be a support during the WFD for the American folk groups that were coming from Gallaudet to Tokyo for the conference. So anyway, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of experiences that CODAs have that I definitely feel connected to deaf community. Half of me. I explained to my mom. Even now, mom asks me sometimes when I'm around deaf people, mom asks me, "You're deaf or hearing, which?" I'm like, she forgot, a little bit forgot. "You're deaf or hearing?" I'm like, "Mom, I'm hearing, but feel like heart inside half deaf." Yes, because of my sign rich, my experiences of growing up.
Yeah.
Would never trade it.
Yeah, my dad, like later on, he was like,
See, you had that too, Joy.
when he was more, yeah,
Right, forgetting or.
yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
But the first person who told me that I was hearing was my dad. I didn't realize I was a hearing person until I was 13.
Wow.
I know I could hear, but I didn't know that he would call me a hearing person. So that was very devastating.
Ooh, being called to hear.
Well, I
And
thought
I
I was going to Gallaudet.
say again,
I thought that I was going to Gallaudet.
the deafs. Wow.
Yeah, I thought that I would be going to graduate from Gallaudet because my parents both graduated from Gallaudet. So I was
Right.
legacy, went to Gallaudet. I'm going to Gallaudet. And I was wearing my father's sweater, Gallaudet. It was yellow with brown felt something.
Mhm.
I was wearing, "You gotta graduate." He said, you can't go to.
Oh,
That was before the Hugs program. It was before
what program?
the
Hug?
HUGS. It's the hearing undergraduate program.
Oh, they can, right.
So
Mhm.
this was before. Yeah, it was before that. So
Oh.
yeah, it's yeah. It started in the 80s, like when I was at Gallaudet. It started in the 80s. I saw hearing undergraduates. Oh, I didn't know that. They were becoming counselors or whatever. But so this was before, and he told me no. He said, "But you're hearing." And I was like, I was offended. I was so offended. But I think because I was so upset, he was like, he really like had to downplay Gallaudet. He'd say, "It's a deaf school, their education, it's not for hearing." Yeah, but he was like, "It's not for hearing, it's for deaf people. You can go to any hearing school, better for you because you're hearing." And I was like, I was offended because I thought my parents were the smartest people in the world and they went to that college. I was like, so
Yeah,
it was
good
upsetting. I was 13.
for her because her father said that she can't go Gallaudet. She wanted. She
I'm
wanted
hearing.
Gallaudet. Father said no. Gallaudet for deaf people. Go hearing.
So yeah, and
Mm.
it's you act like hearing up here. It's offensive. You mentioned being offended about being hearing. It's opposite for me. My daughter was probably at 11 with my kids. My son was maybe 8 or so. And Deaf Way too. Uh-huh. And Deaf Way 1, I was an interpreter, a universal interpreter. And then they had Deaf Way 2, and I decided to leave the kids and go to that. I took the kids and we went to that. And so both my codas went with me, and my daughter immediately started crying. It was kind of shocking. What are you crying about? And she said, are they like you? And I said, what do you mean? There are other deaf people like you. I thought that you two were the only deaf people in the world. And I told her, no, 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 no. There are many, many, many deaf people all over the world and codas like you. There are a lot of codas. She said, no, 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 I'm the only one. It's just us. We're the only ones. We're the only ones. We're the only hearing people. And so that was a moment for her. It blew my mind for a moment. I realized, she thought that we were the only deaf people in the world and that she
Right.
was the only, coda in the world.
Yeah, I think I understand that because I said I was the only coda in my community. I mean, we were near New York. I didn't know other codas. There was no groups. It wasn't until I went to Gallaudet 1987 for that voice interpreting workshop for 3 weeks, and I stayed at mom's. She has deaf friends, of course, Maryland, all over. I stayed at their homes for the 3 weeks, but I stayed on the campus for. I stayed on the school grounds all day, studying. And then when I saw that VHS, I was like, there's a whole group and they're sharing stories about deaf parents. I love this. I love this. And that's when I remember the feeling is like yesterday again, when I told my mom, mom said, no, what for? Complain? Nothing wrong, deaf parents. Deaf parents proud to be deaf. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay, that's her experience different.
And
Love.
many deaf parents face that too.
Mhm.
And the goal is not to complain, but to
Share, just
change. Like the goal
share.
is to change and to help future deaf parents, like empower them to be stronger
Right.
parents with more resources than before.
For
Like
sure.
for alone, 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 alone. Now we're going to work together and with the codas to help, because we also have knowledge of what it's like to be deaf in
Definitely.
the deaf world. Like we get it. We're there with you. And it's called, it sounds pleasant. It's called courtesy stigma. So courtesy stigma, that we get labeled with the same brush. They say, oh, that deaf family over there. They don't say those deaf people with those hearing children. They don't, they label us all in that group. So by I get that. And the microaggressions, like my kids today, they're quotas, and they also they experience those microaggressions and quota treatment. Um, they People expect a lot from them, hearing people. So for example, my kids all play sports, and my husband for many years was a coach. But when he has hearing coaches, the last one I remember particularly, the coaches will come to him and remember tomorrow at 11 o'clock, tell your dad, and they'll explain and they make sure to him, but they don't tell the other hearing children that, right? He has more like additional responsibility to get there on time, but other kids,
Mhm.
like, hey, Stan knows how to get up. um, Well, they want to make sure that they heard, right? That they emphasize that to tell their parents because they feel I don't communicate adequate with that parent. So their inadequacy leads them to depend on the children, right?
Mm.
That's not okay, but it does happen. Well, for the same reason that when at the table, they often will give the check to the hearing person because they did all the talking, right? Even though, right? So even if I'm paying, I always point to my husband, force them to give it to him. I'm like, it's just a habit, give it to him. And he'll say, have a tip. I'll tell him, he'll sign it for me, but it doesn't matter if I always force them to give it to him. But same reason. I want to share one story. When my kids were teenagers and they were able to, have more in-depth conversations, we were sitting at a restaurant with them, and the wait person immediately came up and started talking. And so they started talking to them. And I said, hey, hi, very nicely. I said, hi. I said, you know that I'm their mother. And I told them, you guys don't use your voices. And I said, I wrote on a piece of paper. I didn't have my phone at the time. I wrote down, I said, hi, I'm their mom, and this is their dad. And I explained, we're the ones who are paying, not them. So if you wouldn't mind, ask us first. So ask us about, because they can't just order whatever they want, ask us first. And don't be afraid to ask us or write it down. And the both of them, my children were both very good about it. And we all looked around, and both the kids were like, they wouldn't say anything. And so they smiled. And it was a frozen moment. The waitress was just like, oh, okay. I was like, are you all right? Are you okay? I'm not going to bite. Did I bite you? And the waitress was like, oh, well, no. Okay. All right. And then everything calmed down and everything was fine. And it was just a moment. And I just wanted her to know who was paying, because I'm responsible for my children. They can't just order whatever they want. I'm the one who's here and the adult in the situation. You need to ask us first. And after that, it went well. It went very smooth after we kind of set that expectation. And, they asked me about the children's order, and I was the one who was able to order what they want. And a little bit of power was taken back, and, I was re-empowering myself. And now that they're bigger, I'll ask them if they remember it. And they said, yeah, they remember it very well. And they're glad that they did it. They're glad that I did that. So yeah, people learn with little and corrections, right? And next time she will ask the parents instead of asking the kids.
Mhm.
So I know today still, and how coders react to that. So we have what's called fawning. Fawning. Do you remember me telling the story about my mom at the grocery store? And my mom, I don't read lips. And me going, hey, it's called fawning. So we are often left to kind of with the hearing people, while deaf people kind of do that sometimes. So my kids will do that. I've seen them. I've seen my kids fawn with hearing people. So yeah, it's a survival. So fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and faint. So that one will with people to meet me.
Fix or cut. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, we went into an ice cream shop, and the boys and me, and then my husband came in, and I started signing what's special. Oh, they have delicious ice cream there. They have Arabic coffee ice cream. I dream about it. It's so delicious, but it's delicious. And I was explaining to my husband what the specials for today, and the man, oh, I'm sorry. And my kids were like, no. All the boys, three of them, like, it's okay. She's just telling him what the special is. It's okay.
Making the hearing people comfortable. We have to fix the hearing people. Codas, we have to make them comfortable. Yeah, oh yeah, 100%.
More explosive than others, I've seen the pattern. That, yeah, it's that. Yeah, that's what they're doing is fawning. So hearing people sometimes they'd be like, why are you doing that? Oh, I don't know. It's uncomfortable. So interesting. Tina, you took off your mute.
I was just thinking when I was small, every time we went to a restaurant, my mum would always complain about the fried eggs. They were never right. She always wanted to send them back. And so she would tell me to tell the waitress, but I didn't want to complain because I was a people pleaser. So I like so then she would go, Miss, and I'm like, no, stop it. and then she'd always complain about the egg, but I would always, however she said it, I would change it and make it much more polite, just to keep the peace, because I couldn't cope with conflict.
It's called.
I had those experiences too, Tina.
I'm gonna tell Bob. I'm gonna tell Bob.
It's like, please don't order an egg. Please don't order an egg.
Yeah. We're left to kind of, yeah, with parents. Yeah. And I always complained about, or they complain about food. Bob is picky about food. So he always, he's a chef. So he always has a concern that, and this isn't right. And he wants to say something. And the kids are like, oh,
Sorry.
get
me out of it.
And so both of them already know that he's going to say something about this food and have somebody come over and like, oh, yeah. And I just sit back and I don't take a part of it. And Bob does his thing. And we all used to do that. The three of us used to do that, but we stopped. We just let him do his thing and he gets whatever he needs and he takes care of it. And they say, sure, no problem. And now he says, see, everything's fine. You don't have to worry about any of this. See, it was fine. What are you guys all worried about? Why are you guys sitting there like that? But so you understand that feeling of like trying to like, with hearing people. Yeah, it's an actual survival technique that we use as quotas. So as a fun. Anyway. No, only goes, you too. Yes, you too. Like, I don't want to deal with that. But it's like making it better. It's not like, trying to finesse that hearing person. We do that pretty good.
I have a story where when I was a teenager wanting a prom dress, shopping in the mall with mom only. Mom, watch me. Shopping with mom, and I wanted that expensive dress, maybe $100 more. Can't afford it. Mom's money can't meet. We're in the mall. I'm trying to, mom, her voice is on. Up, emotional, told me, deaf voice. No, can't have that dress. Her voice is not pretty, sweet, cute deaf voice. Mom voice is loud. She know it. Look, use your voice. You want to talk? They can hear, except one deaf can't hear maybe. So the point is, mom deaf. She explained, because I was trying to take advantage of her. I want the dress, and I was to mom, hearing people passing upscale mall, shopping mall, hearing people walking by, just me and mom, and beg her for that dress. Mom, finish, no, can't afford, money can't meet, no, stubborn, no, listen, I said no, can't. Hearing people walk, I would pick on hearing people walking. They're looking, I said, what are you looking at? I'm take my anger on them. I said, why are you looking? Interesting, my strategy. I said, what are you looking at? I saw myself do that. Mom said, leave them alone. And I remember this day, she said, leave them alone. They're hearing people. They're just curious, looking at signs. I knew that. I knew they were looking at us, but I needed a scapegoat. Blame them. I said, they're looking. Mom said, and then she would increase her voice up when I didn't listen. Then she voiced louder. She said, I explained to you already. God give me deaf. That's me. I'm proud. I'm deaf. Period. I was like, whoa. After that, learned lesson 100%. She's proud. She's not ashamed, hide. So when I went to first coda, I met people with different experiences. So I was surprised, and it really valued to me. I was like, wow. Some of them said where they lived or their life experience, like parents depended on them to speak for them. Some of them my age, my generation, some younger. And I was like, really variety of experiences. So I appreciate my mom for being strong and not letting me not steal her, letting her parent me, letting her. She did her job, and I know it was tough stuff.
Hearing children are tough, right, Mom?
She asked you, Joy, say it again for her.
Hard for you, huh? Yeah. Yeah. It's so proud to see these beautiful children all raised. Yeah. I still have a trigger. I still have a trigger. Is this one.
Yes.
Still, so my mom would say, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Oh, oh. I had a client do that to me. So I said, you need to go.
Yeah.
You're done. That's my trigger. I don't take that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Can't hear you. Very frustrating. Okay. Well, we will see you again at 12. We'll be back at 12. I think it's a different link. Yep. So the second one will be here, and I will see you again in 30 minutes. Yeah, that. I'm shocked. Yeah, it's the second one. Oh, Stella! Stella, hey, come back in 30 minutes. The second one. Stella. Stella.
All right, I'll be there.
All right, we'll see you in a few.
See you later.
Yeah, it's this, yeah, the second link. See you soon.